Being a business owner is tough. Last time I checked, right? We have something to do all the time. We have people to manage. We have clients to manage. We have things to deliver. And, just that, that reality about burnout, exhaustion, overwhelm, and it really just keeps us from doing our best work, right? So good news today. I'm here with Debbie Danon. She is an integral coach she's going to help us figure out some ways that we can create boundaries, but we're going to talk about what that really even means, first of all, and how those can help us really deal with that burnout, exhaustion, that feeling of a business owner that we just have to do everything and be everywhere and overwhelmed, because this is such an important piece of our success, right? We've got to be able to actually be present and healthy in our businesses to run them successfully. Welcome everyone to the Thrive Biz Chat, where we talk about what it really takes to run a thriving service business. I'm Selena Guerrero, your host. It's always sort of funny saying that, and founder of the Thrive Sales Accelerator, where I help service-based entrepreneurs consistently generate more clients so they can grow and scale their business. Debbie, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Selena. It's such a joy.
I'm going to give a little quick intro before we get started, so everybody knows a little bit.
What's she going to say? What's she going to say?
I came up with a secret bio, and I'm not going to tell you what it was. No, Debbie loves haikus. Okay.
True story.
Right. Yeah, we'll get to that later. Okay, Debbie is a certified integral coach and inclusive leadership consultant. She's based in London, UK, with 15 plus years of experience in leadership development and coaching to excellence. Through her practice, Debbie Danon, Time to Flourish, she supports her clients to cultivate lives of true flourishing through practicing more authentic, courageous, and purpose-led ways of being. That's just sounds amazing. She is also co-founder and the vice chair of innovative intergenerational Jewish community, Makor Hayim, as well as being a mom, and she's married to a fellow entrepreneur. You must need boundaries then. Thank you for being here. I love to start off the show with, how did you end up doing what you're doing today? What brought you to being an integral coach?
Such a great question. Oh, that was a lovely intro. Thank you for that. So I guess in some ways, isn't it that thing that it all makes sense backwards? Was that a Steve Jobs quote? So I arrived at being an integral coach through being fascinated with human flourishing, actually. So that led me over the years to study theology and religious studies at university. I was really interested in philosophy and what guides people to be in harmony and in conflict and what that's all about, human behavior. I then ended up co-founding or being one of the first members of staff of a interfaith and anti-racism organization. So really looking at how do we understand how humans have stories about each other, and how do we deprogram ourselves from that, and how do we adjust our behaviors accordingly. And then worked in consulting for some years, doing leadership development consulting, early talent consulting, sort of strategic leadership development processes. And then in 2017, actually after a really difficult period, I had a miscarriage, and then I was made redundant. So I went through a real moment of boom, boom, boom. And then we had to move out of our flat, actually. We had to be, our landladies were coming back early from Tokyo. So it was just I was in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house going, what just happened to me? And at that time, two things happened. One is that I thought, well, I've been building things for other people for so long. It's time I really put I backed myself. I put all my confidence that I've been putting into other people's projects into my own. So you're nodding, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
So I started my own practice, which started with training, associate facilitating, and coaching as well. And I looked into kind of coaching training. And the other thing that happened was that I co-founded a business called Trust Lab, which with a wonderful woman called Yasmin Akhtar, to do diversity and inclusion consulting. She's Muslim, I'm Jewish. We are really, really close. And we thought, actually, we have something to add to the conversation on diversity and inclusion, where actually faith doesn't feature a whole lot in the business world. And also we have the end-to-end skills to do that. So I guess that the 2017 was a real milestone to go, do you know what, I'm going to back myself. And it's gone through so many twists and turns since then. I just recently certified as an integral coach after having my daughter. I took 2 years rather than 1 year. And that was a real arrival at the realization that human flourishing really is about including as much of yourself as possible. And the world is not designed for that. We know that from diversity inclusion practice. We know that the world is not designed for us to be our best selves. It's down to us and the communities we build around ourselves. And I want to be community for people. I want to be people's accomplice and accompanier through times of flux and transition to help them really discover what it means to flourish. And usually it's quite different from what they're doing right now. And that's not any fault of theirs. It's just because the world is as it is and expectations are as they are. So Yasmin and I just recently wrapped up Trust Lab. We've been working together for 4 years, and we decided actually we were going to go our separate ways, which also required boundary setting, right? Of going, okay, how do we disentangle in a way? But all on good terms. And now I am committed to building Time to Flourish and seeing where that goes. So I have a few things cooking on my many hobs. I'm blogging, I write poetry. And as you said, I also am really passionate about building an inclusive and intergenerational Jewish community in London. So yeah, I guess this has been a journey of alignment for me since 2017.
This is I just love everything you're saying. I'm so excited for everyone to hear more from you, because I think that this journey you've been on is a journey for so many of us, right? Where we're finding our way, we're navigating the challenges. And I think I just want to say, your company is Debbie Danon Time to Flourish, right? And I have the Thrive Sales Business Chat and the Thrive Sales Accelerator. And I think it's a similar sort of moment of reckoning, maybe for me, a recognition that just having a business is not enough, right? That having a thriving business, right, or having a life is not enough, that having a life that flourishes, right, or a career that flourishes. And so I am completely aligned with that message. And I get that. And I think that's why this boundaries conversation is like a perfect sort of topic to kind of cover how we need those in order to thrive and to flourish. So I'm so excited for you to be here. I have so many questions. I know we have a lot we want to share with everyone. I just want to welcome anyone who's here. Yeah. If you have questions for Debbie, to chime in the comments. I'm sure Debbie would love to answer them. So again, we'll just invite everybody here to say hello and to ask questions. The first thing I want to just do is kind of talk about. I like to break down terms, because I think we're always talking about these things and people kind of just assume, this like turns into this like consultant speak where nobody actually knows what anybody's really talking about. So tell us a little bit about what integral coach is, and then you can get into sort of what are boundaries really? I'd love to kind of just touch on the integral coach part first. Thank you.
Sure. So integral coaching, a lot of coaching, there's lots of different schools of coaching out there. The reason integral coaching really appealed to me is because it talks about the whole person, that if you're going to create transformation in your life, we can't just use our brains and our emotions. Like that's a lot. Cognitive and emotional coaching is very common in the business world. I think it was cognitive at first, lots of models. Then it was like, how are you feeling? And now I think integral coaching brings in the whole human in a way that I haven't seen elsewhere. So it brings in the spiritual, for example, i.e. what's your purpose? What are you on this earth to do? It brings in the somatic, i.e. the body, which we're going to talk about today in terms of boundaries. Our body knows so much, and our brain, we've taught ourselves, the world has taught us to switch off our intuition. So how do we reconnect with that and really listen to what our bodies are trying to tell us? Then there's the relational, which is our relational field with others is constantly changing, and a source of such comfort at times and a source of such conflict and difficulty at others. So how do we what stories do we have about how we relate to people and how we might do that? So there's all these different elements to how we exist in the world, and then how do we integrate them? That's really the task of an integral coach, is to assess what a client is with all these different things and work on which muscle needs the most strengthening, in a sense. So with that, what are boundaries anyway? This ties in beautifully, Selena, which is boundaries are limits. So anything that we have is limited. Our physical strength, our physical energy has a limit. I hate to tell you this, business owners. I mean, you've probably worked out already, but you don't have an unlimited amount of energy. You do not have an unlimited amount of time. You do not have an unlimited amount of resources. That is guaranteed. That's the kind of nature of the world we live in. So I think boundaries are the limits, and having boundaries is having an honesty about those limits, really admitting to those limits and not seeing that as a sign of weakness, but seeing that as a sign of immense strength, because rather than being thinly spread, you're concentrating your power within what helps you thrive and what helps you drive what you want to drive forward, rather than being very, very thinly stretched, being resentful, being worn out, being burnt out, heaven forbid. So our limits can be physical, when we feel tired, exhausted, thirsty, sort of whatever that is, that feeling. Then they can be mental and emotional as well. So mental might be about the limits that we experience. It might also be about time and energy, like where using our brains, we direct our time, manage our time and direct our energy. Emotional might be about those energy sucks around things that trigger us emotionally. And that relates to the relational as well. So a lot of that's to do with other people too. And people rely on us, our clients rely on us, our families rely on us, particularly as women. We've been, it's not very long ago that women were expected to just exist to supply everyone else's needs. So, we have this message of being reliable, particularly women entrepreneurs. So in my mind, boundaries are limits, and they are, and having boundaries requires us to be honest about where our limits are. And if you don't know where your limits are, don't worry, there is nothing wrong with you. It's just that the world is not designed for it. Like this, I cannot say this enough. I'm gonna say it one more time. There is nothing wrong with you if you don't know where your boundaries are, because the world expects us from a young age. We go to school and we're told, do your best and then do it, and a little bit more. And, if you are from a marginalized background, for example, you might find that you want to be the funny one, or the one who works extra hard, or you have to sort of earn your way, into privilege in some way. And it's such a rat race, and it's such a lie, really. But there are all these ways in which we are taught to override our limits. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's healthy to push yourself. Olympians, etc. Great, that's used a lot. But at any given point, we always want to be stretching into our stretch zone and not overstretching and ending up injured. Does that make sense? So maybe that's all I'll say about that. But I want us to know what this is bringing up for you as a business owner and someone who supports people who are building thriving businesses.
Exactly. And I just think that the average business owner is this idea that the world is set up in a way for us to hustle, right? For us to push, we do whatever we can to survive in our businesses. We always say yes to the clients, right? And so it's like, that is the culture that we live in, right? And in the business world. And I don't know if it's just that I've kind of had my own awakening around this, or if it's part of the sort of in the culture now, right? This idea of this integration of everybody, everything you are. I'm sure there's a lot, you would know this more than I would, right? But there's a lot kind of going on in the world right now that kind of tunes into mental health and sort of allows us to sort of be a little more human, right? In our work, in our career, in our businesses. But I do think just this idea of boundaries, like for a certain generation, it's like you just did what was required no matter what. And so that's why I think this conversation is really important, because it's like we don't know what we don't know, right? I want to ask the question for our listeners, how does it really help our businesses? We wanted to sort of front load this question, because I just want everyone to sort of know first, like, why is this really important? How is it going to actually help? Because I think the obvious thing is, oh, well, if I set boundaries, I'm not going to do all the things I need to do to be successful. The fear of doing less is just extraordinary, right? Maybe you could just you talked about it a little bit before, but let's just get a little bit clearer on that. How is that going to really help me when I create boundaries? Because that's the scary thing, right?
Totally. And I want to say, before I do that, let me say a word about this loss thing, because you've nailed it. I think our biggest boundary to setting boundaries is our fear of loss, I think, is like, oh gosh, this is going to cost me. I'm going to be less as a result of this. And I want to posit that, in fact, there might be a period where we do feel like we're contracting a bit, and that some things fall off, or some things we have to let go of. But actually what we're doing is concentrating our power at the center rather than spreading it thin. We can feel that difference, right? Between being stretched and really centering. So let me give you 3 ways. There are lots of ways that boundary setting can help with business, but let me give you 3, magic 3. So first, it helps us get really clear on our priorities. We decide where we're going to put energy, where we're not. And even, I say priorities also in the energy sense of what you're good at, what you really thrive on, and actually what maybe you need to outsource, what you need to automate, what you need to just spend less time and energy on. It's that thing of like, I need to stop doing the dishes at 10 o'clock every night. I need to make sure that I do that straight away after dinner because I need that time back in my life to, spend with my partner or whatever. So it's about, what am I really prioritizing, and let me actually arrange my life around those priorities. Number 2, it helps us make more aligned and realistic decisions. So if as a business owner, you find yourself taking off too much and then letting people down and getting into like car crash situations, God forbid, then this is for you. It's about going, you know what? It's about saying yes to the things that you really mean yes to and that you can take on. And it's about really aligning with, is this my niche? Is this where my power is? Or is this something I want to partner with someone else on? Or is this something I want to pass on to another great associate who will do great work? And actually, this isn't for me right now. So it helps us make aligned and realistic decisions. And the third thing is, if we know where our boundaries are, we can communicate them to others. So that's a whole other skill. Knowing where our boundaries are is one thing for ourselves. Then there's communicating them to others. And this, how many times do we end up saying yes to someone through gritted teeth when really, with every fiber of our being, we're like, no way. I mean, and what does that breed? That breeds resentment. It breeds a fear of letting people down. It means we don't do things to our best ability. It's taking away energy from other things. So actually, it's a source of authenticity that avoids all these kind of energy stuck things in the end. And it might be difficult, particularly for women who've been told you need to be agreeable all times, you need to be, and actually, for men also, it's really difficult because it sends that message, particularly the way, and I say this not in an essentialized way, but because of the ways men and women are socialized, particularly in Western societies. A lot of men don't set boundaries because they think it's weak. It shows limitation. Men are supposed to be superheroes, right? So, I'm generalizing, but the ways of socializing means that communicating boundaries is really hard. And after you've done it, I often forget about it. I'm like, it was so hard communicating that boundary to someone, and they go, okay. And then, I just have all this time and energy left in my life to do other things. So priorities, aligned and realistic decisions, communicating to others so that you're being authentic and honest with them, and everybody is happier in the end. How does that sound?
We're all done here. Thank you for coming. Seriously, it's funny because as you're talking, I'm thinking it's really this issue of energy, right? Because it's like, I feel like I can't make this boundary. And then the amount of energy that it takes to not only execute the work, but the emotional, mental weight of it, right? Just lingers on of personal resentment of why did I make that decision? So it's just fascinating, but I think that does kind of require us to acknowledge that we're not robots, that we are going to carry that weight emotionally or mentally, and that alone is going to exhaust us, hence the exhaustion burnout, right? Which doesn't necessarily come from physical exhaustion, right? But just sort of an over a sensory overload of everything that we have to do. So thank you for that. I want to ask, how do we know when we need them? Because I think I see all those benefits so clearly, the prioritizing, the alignment, the communication. But I think as we're going in our businesses, we just feel like we have to do everything. So how do we recognize that in ourselves? How do we know that boundaries is what we need to solve maybe some of the issues that we're having? And then maybe we don't even know that we have the issues. I don't know, maybe you can talk about that.
Totally. So I thought for this, Selena, I would bring two alternative ways in. So we could go the physical route, which is what I usually do with clients who are in overwhelm and in exhaustion, or maybe not quite at burnout yet. If we're at burnout, we definitely go for the body and we do some nice soothing things. But if we're in that zone, I would start with the physical, and then we can talk about the cognitive clues as well. So in the physical realm, so as I said before, the body knows. The body just knows. There's an intuition that comes that we sometimes bury or we haven't been in touch with for a long time. And as I've got more and more in touch with it, I have cultivated a sense of what yes feels like for me. what no feels like for me. And then the whole spectrum of maybe that sits in the middle, and like journeying across that kind of tundra of maybe towards yes or no, or yes with conditions, like yes, but I can only do it if X, Y, Z. So when I work with clients on this, and I just, inspired by our conversation, Selena, I wrote a blog about this recently. There's a way in which we can really inhabit all those times in our lives that we've said a wholehearted yes. So whether that was, you know, a friend asking you to go to a music festival, or getting that dream client that you're like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. You know, this is the exact kind of people I want to be working for the exact kind of money I want to be working for, or something, or, you know, on your wedding day, you know, whatever it might be, saying yes with a whole heart, knowing what that feels like. And then you can recognize it, right? You can be like, yeah, that's what that is. Then there's no, which is actually, particularly as women, I hate to say this, but we've been taught to override it. You know, it's crazy. The whole consent conversation is a whole other conversation, but it's crazy that we're taught to say yes in every conversation except in the bedroom, and then suddenly we're supposed to say no. Like, it baffles me. But I think there is something in that around, what does my no feel like, and what's my no trying to tell me? And is it a fear no, where it's like, don't do it because it's going to be scary? But actually, if I like traverse the maybe tundra, I can kind of get to like, oh, you know what? That's a fear that I recognize. That's the kind of trembly, like nervousness, but excitement. Or it's going, no, do you know what? This is not safe for me. I've had a client like this before and it turned into a total wreck. Like, I'm not doing that again. And knowing where your red lines are, right? I had a job, which I thought was my dream job, but actually I got burnt out from it. And I set 3 red lines when I came back from stress leave with them, where I said, look, I need this, and I need this from you in terms of being able to perform here. By Thursday, I came back on Monday. On Thursday, they crossed all 3 of my red lines multiple times. The following Monday, I gave my resignation, right? Because we know what no, it hadn't occurred to me to like articulate them in that way. It was a coach that I worked with that really helped me do that. So if we know where our no's are, then we can deal with that. And of course, maybe is a whole world, right? Maybe because I'm fearful, and that, you know, I don't want to say yes to this because maybe I'm not ready. Well, we can work with that. We know about the inner critic. We know about what might be standing in the way. We can talk to a friend. We can talk to a coach. I do a whole lot of work with people around, you know, dealing with and integrating their inner critic. Then there's the whole world of like, actually, I really want to do it for the money, but it doesn't feel aligned to me. It's like the niche. It's not my niche, right? I've got a thing on the table right now, which is something that I used to do, something from previous work life that someone set my way. And if I'm honest, it was a maybe veering towards no. I'm like, do you know what? This isn't my gig anymore. I know plenty of people whose it is. I'm going to send them this gig. So hanging out in that maybe place and really recognizing the nuances of maybe is super powerful. So I just wondered, before I go on to the cognitive, and I'll make that super short, I wonder, Selena, what's resonating for you from your experience of this bodily experience of where your boundaries are?
Well, I think it goes back to this idea that like the world is telling me I always have to say yes. And I think there's 2 parts. One is like, I think up to a certain point in my career, like I didn't even know there was another option, right? Like I didn't know I was actually like, I could say no. I mean, it's not the world. It's not like, you know, even if I would take a job and I'd feel like I have to do everything. It was me almost doing too much, right? It wasn't even, so you've got two sets of that, right? You've got your own internal voice, right? And then you've got the external, but like at the end of the day, if you're not actually acknowledging that you don't really want to do, if I had like $1 for every time I didn't even question it. Like, I think that's the moment that you're talking about. It's like, oh, I actually have a choice and I actually can like think about, like, how do I actually feel about that and make a different decision? I think that's sort of like where the rubber hits the road. Like if you're not actually having that moment with yourself, you know, because, and also, again, I just want to put this in a larger context of business owners. We're moving so fast and we have so many fires that I know that it is so hard to even slow down enough to think about that.
Yeah, 100%. I think the word that's coming to me is permission. So a big part of my role as a coach, part of the reason I chose the name Time to Flourish, so I wanted to give people time to flourish between us. And because it's time, like we don't have any more time. We got to live your life. And let's make sure it's time to flourish. So in the hour or an hour and a half or even a half day that I spend with somebody, a big part of my role is giving them permission to drop all of that, is to go, you're allowed to say no. You have full permission to tell this person to go away, you know. There was somebody, you know, who was emailing me a lot about this course that they were running, and they like would email me like 3 times a week, and I just like had to be like, and it was hard doing it, like, please stop emailing me. And then I just didn't have to deal with it anymore, right? But it's like, until you do it, you're like, "Rrr." So it's about giving yourself the permission. So I really hear that. It's so hard. We're dealing with meta-narratives much bigger than ourselves that are driving us to say yes. And the realities of running a business where you're a one-person show, you know? So I really hear that. And I think that's where a coach can be really helpful, to give us that time and that permission to slow down, touch inwards, you know?
I just think the skill building around that, just like anything, just like learning anything. So it's interesting, because I just feel like when you talk about becoming, you know, a business owner, and you know, well, I guess I have a lot to say about around sales and all this stuff, but coming into a business and what you think the business is going to be like, right? And then you realize there are all these other things that you kind of have to manage. And, you know, I mean, becoming an entrepreneur is a very, you know, it's really about this very self-actualizing sort of experience, right? And so it's kind of interesting. It's not just what we do, but how we do it and the choices that we make. And yeah, I'm sure the listeners are understanding. I don't want to go on too much about it, but I'm right there with you. And I know a lot of people that are hearing this feel the same way. I know Stacey was on here, and she was saying that she was just talking about this. She's like, the body knows. And good for you, Stacey. You're actually paying attention to that, because again, for all of us, you know, what does setting boundaries require from us, right? How do I, like, this is kind of the question that I know you really wanted. This is kind of like the moment, the most important question, right? It's a little bit of what we're talking about, but just walk us through that, Debbie. What does it require of me?
So my framework for any change that I'm trying to bring about is the same, and the content changes. So what do we need in terms of self-awareness? What do we need in terms of practice? Things that we do again and again until they become second nature. And what do we need in terms of co-conspirators or community, right? We need people around us who are going to be in this with us. So in terms of self-awareness, we need to get live to, first of all, we need to get honest. First of all, admit that we are limited, right? Like Elphaba says in Wicked, she's like, I'm limited. I thought I was unlimited. And then by the end of the show, she's like, I'm limited. There's just I cannot get around this. Like, I thought I was invincible, and I'm just not. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's called being human. And to get honest about that, and then to go, okay, what are the narratives that tell me, personally that I don't have a right to my boundaries? So I need to be excellent all the time. I need to be perfect. I need to do it all. Otherwise, I'm some kind of failure. I need to take care of everyone in my life, otherwise I'm a failure. You know, whatever it is, I need to be liked all the time. I can't afford to offend people. Get in touch with what those narratives are, and you know, get working on those. You know, you can work with a coach, or you can sort of do some inner critic work. I think it's really important. And a tool that I use to kind of increase my self-awareness around this is I guess when I notice that I'm spiraling about like all the things I have to do, is to like write them all down, and that slows me down. And then to put them into a kind of a constellation. Sometimes I do it in like a circle, and I'll like circle maybe like the top 5 things that are like really need to be done. And then I just let go of the others. I literally, even though I know I'm going to do them tomorrow or some other time, I'll like scribble them out. And it feels really stressful. But then I look at it and I'm like, oh, 5 things. I can do 5 things or 3 things, right? I can be more realistic about that. So even just scribbling those things out and getting comfortable with the loss. So that's really good. Then there's practice. So we've talked about practice in terms of the physical practice. And I just wrote this, so you talked about haikus at the beginning. I just wrote this blog, which we're going to share underneath this as well, which is, I was sharing a practice I share with my clients, which is to do this exercise of yes, no, maybe. And I have a whole range of those, a whole suite of them. But as part of that, I get clients to touch inwards and then to write haikus, or to write 10 words or less, summarizing the experience of yes, no, or maybe for them. So that then they have it like on their phone or in their wallet to be able to pull out in decision-making moments, to be like, where on the spectrum does this hit? Like, where is this? And that's a practice, right? To do that regularly. The other one I have is I mentioned this to you the other day, JARS, JARS. So this is like, so checking in with, does this sap my joy? Does this sap my authenticity? Does this sap my resources? And does this sap my safety? Like, if this is like net draining on those things, then this is a no. Like, this is something I just need to cut out of my life, even if that's short term, very uncomfortable. So that's something I have in my back pocket as well when I'm weighing something up. And then co-conspirators. Lots of people in your life have no interest in you having boundaries because they're quite used to relying on you. Thank you very much. So we need to have to get interested in who in our lives is willing and able to help us learn about our boundaries and maintain them. So I have my various entrepreneur friends who we really try to help each other with this, because it's very easy to say it, but you need that accountability. The other thing is to enroll people in your life. So I say to every client, who in your life can support you to make this change? And I get them to name 2 people and to enroll them in that and to take them on the journey, because I'm going to be gone. Like, hopefully if I've done my job, I'm going to be, do the work and then free them into their lives. But those people that they're in their lives are going to still be there. So that's really what I would say is, it takes the self-awareness to clock what's going on. It takes practice of like going back, slowing down, checking in, working out where those energy saps are and taking action. And then co-conspirators, it's bringing in that sense of accountability and support that's so necessary to make lasting change.
Wow. So much wonderful information. I'm kind of blown away here. I want to repeat some of that for everybody. So the first, including myself, basically. So first of all,
get carried away.
Oh gosh, no, it's all so good. I'm like, kind of like excited, so excited. I think this idea of like, yes, no, maybes, that seems like, something that's simple, like, right. I mean, I know we have all these other things. We have to be honest that, like, you talked about just admitting we are limited. I love that wicked analogy. The narrative, like, right, the giving ourselves permission. I think that's almost the hardest part, like giving myself permission to like actually, make different choices. And then the practice itself, right? So just yes, no, maybe, right? On the spectrum of anything, like get my little sticky, put it on my computer, whatever, right? Like yes, no, maybe, like that is pretty simple, right? Just kind of as a starting place, sort of that self-awareness piece. So yes, no, maybe. And I think sort of like secondary, I love this JARS, JARS, like, is it depleting my joy? So like, how do I answer yes, no, maybe, right? Is it depleting my joy? Is it depleting my authenticity? Is it depleting my resources? And is it depleting my safety? See, I took taking notes because I'm going to make sure I use these. I mean, it's I just love the way you frame this out, because I feel like somebody who is not necessarily accustomed to creating boundaries doesn't even necessarily have that awareness yet. These are really simple tools. And I think that's amazing. I really, really thank you for sharing these things that we can kind of wrap our minds around, right, very quickly and begin to build that habit over time, because this is big, in some ways, big life changes, right, that we have to kind of implement over time. And then, of course, that community that comes in. So yeah, I don't even know what to say. I think these tools that you're sharing with everybody is like very generous and so smart and so feasible, right? Do you think it's hard for, like, in your practice, do you find it hard for people to do this kind of work? Or do you think like most people can get there? Like, what's been your experience on that?
Wow, such a good question. Yeah, I think, look, it takes practice. And when we start practicing, we're a beginner at something. I mean, there are breakdowns, right? There are moments of just, oh, wow, that went horribly. And even just coming back from holiday now, like I found myself just like having been so boundaried, not looking at my emails, not looking at my socials, like suddenly bombarded and falling back into those habits. And someone asking me literally straight when I was back, asking me to do something for the voluntary project I'm involved in. And I was like, did I just say yes to that? What did I just do? So it is a practice for life, because we are battling meta narratives of society and all of the ways we've internalized those, that make us us, and that's fine. But I have seen vast improvement. I've seen vast improvement in myself, because I totally relied on people pleasing and being charming and saying yes to things to get by. And as a business owner, I just, you just burn out that way. And well, even before, like in my previous job. So I think, and I'm thinking of a couple of clients one who was setting boundaries in terms of leading a diversity and inclusion function within an organization as a Black woman, having to really limit how generous she was being with herself, because it was actually to the point where, it was damaging to her health, and where she needed to contract more supporters and more champions who could do the work with her, because it just was like, it was not sustainable and not healthy. It was like actually a safety matter for her. And then I'm thinking of someone else in a totally different sphere who I supported, who is, she's a business owner, she's a yoga teacher and an actress. And she was, it was all about, I guess, emotional boundaries and boundaries with others, how to get over the people pleasing and really be authentic in herself and let go of resentment. So I have seen some absolutely amazing moves that people make, and it is possible, like anything, if we practice it and if we have people to support us when we fall down and pick us up again, it's possible.
And when I think about people in their careers today, especially over the last year and businesses in the last year, like there is a moment that has come for many where it's just a total breakdown, right? There's no, right, that if we don't try to make some inroads on making those better decisions, right, about our resources and our limits, right, as you started this conversation, that there's going to be a reckoning.
Yeah.
Is that dramatic?
No, I don't think it's too dramatic. And part of the reason why lockdowns were so challenging is because there was a complete dissolution of boundaries. Everything was happening within the home. Where are the boundaries? That, the fact that we leave and go on a commute, or we go to a co-working space, or we go to an office or client, there was no demarcation. It was all happening in the same space. Everything was collapsing into each other. And now, as we reconstruct after that, there are some very big questions about what, I guess one way to look at the question of hybridity and how we work from here is what enabling constraints or boundaries would help me do my best work and serve my clients best, or what have I learned needs to have a really strong boundary, and what can be a bit more porous. I think, it's funny, as entrepreneurs, I think it's a cliche, but I don't think we really have work and life. It's very entwined, and especially because my husband is an entrepreneur as well. We call ourselves the done entrepreneurs. Like every mealtime has conversations about, I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking about a new service, and I'm thinking about new tech and whatever. So, and that's joyful. As long as it's joyful, great. But if it's sapping your joy, like I had to say to my husband when we were on holiday, I don't want to talk about work anymore. It's not helpful to me. It's just stressing me out. So I guess there is a reckoning of like, now the boundaries have all fallen down. How do we rebuild this Lego tower in a different way? Maybe it's not a tower anymore. Maybe it's something else. So I would say there definitely is a reckoning. And I think that interdependence and community and having co-conspirators in this is going to be key, because it's just shown us that there is no slack in the system. When you don't have childcare, or you don't have like colleagues who can help pick up the slack or whatever, when there's no slack in the system, like there are very real constraints that means we have to lay things down. And so I wonder, like for leaders and managers in organizations too, like how to renegotiate those boundaries.
Yeah, it is the great, they call it the great resignation, but then somebody framed it as the great reevaluation, right? Both from the company side in terms of what kind of work life they want to create for their employees, and the employees, right? This reevaluation and that reconstruction. I think I love that word, because it is an opportunity for a little bit of, maybe I can build this differently in my life moving forward. So it's a little bit of an opening. I love, what did you say? Meta narrative. What did you say about meta? Something about, what was it?
Meta narratives. So meta narratives are like the big overarching narratives that we're participating in all the time without really having officially subscribed to them. So like performativity, or like, FaceTime, like I need to show face or whatever. There's all these things that we sort of get co-opted into that are bigger than us. But that I quite like to think of myself as a bit of a rebel coach, where I'm like, nah, we're not going to do that. So let's think about other ways that we could do that even better. So yeah, that's what meta narratives are. You're spot on. Yeah, that reevaluation is is long overdue.
I am a convert. I remember when we first were chit-chatting about what you were gonna cover. I said, don't use the word meta narratives. That just sounds too technical. Now I'm asking you what it is. See, you brought me along with you. You're such a good teacher. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyone who's listening, if you've listened to this, you know that Debbie is where at. Thank you so much. I want to share some information with everybody. DebbieDanon.com. I'm going to put that in the comments. Please reach out to her. She has an incredible, some new exciting things coming in the fall. So if you want to know about that and you want to be in touch with her, I'm going to put her newsletter. That's probably the best way to be in touch with her. Also, just because there's so much about Debbie that's amazing, is the recent blog you mentioned about what your body knows about boundaries. So I'm putting that in the chat. There's so many ways to reach out to her. And Debbie, I'm gonna just ask you one final question for everybody. What is the one thing that someone can do today? Like, I'm now finishing listening to this and I'm going to do what? Tell people what to do. I want to make sure that it's really actionable.
Amazing. Okay, here's the thing. You mentioned it before. Sometimes we don't have time to even make this decision. We feel like we need to say yes, no, or maybe or yes or no right away. My one thing would be buy yourself some time. So when someone says, oh, we want you to do this and this and this, say, great, thank you. Let me ask you some questions to understand it. And then I'm going to go away and think on it. And I'll come back to you by X date. And then book yourself time in your calendar with a cookie and a coffee or whatever it is. Or just like go out and walk in the park and buy time to connect with your yes, your maybe, and your no. And if it's maybe, like really like hash that out, like do a JARS, you can rewatch this and you can, pick up all the tips, but really spend that time, because actually, if we get beyond the kind of initial anxiety, sometimes it's like a wholehearted yes underneath, or actually we might think, yay, this is big money, but actually underneath there's like misgivings that we could override very easily. So you can come back to your client or your whoever, your spouse, your friend, with yes with conditions. I will do it, but I will only do it after the 25th or whatever. Or no, actually, no, sorry, I can't help you this time. And you have permission. You have my permission, you have Selena's permission, but most importantly, I want you to give yourself permission to take that time. Yeah, that's my one thing.
Thank you very much. That's such a gift of that permission, and for all of those, check to-do list checkers, obsessive to-do checklisters like me, just that break. That's all you have to do. Just take the moment. So thank you so much. My goodness, what a wonderful conversation, Debbie. Thank you so much. I hope everybody goes and finds Debbie, and she's just, you can hear how amazing and how thoughtful and how practical also you are about getting people to have a more flourish in their lives, have time to flourish in their lives. So thank you so much. I don't know what else to say. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful, wonderful conversation, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to this will benefit greatly from all of the amazing tips you've had. Thank you. Anything else? Any final words?
No, it's been a total pleasure. And Selena, just getting to know you as well, I can just see that you're really living this philosophy of learning and being a beginner and really wanting your clients to thrive. Like that's what the business that we're both in. And I'm really delighted that we've connected. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Awesome. All right. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Debbie, again, for all of your generous knowledge and sharing with everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week. See you next week, Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific. Bye.
Bye.